send it to you guys. Perfect. That way I can send it to you guys in your discussion summary, and Alec can look at it if he wants to, or whatever that looks like.
Yeah,
Do you
I'm
want
sure
to
you will.
dive into some subtle relaxation training today? Like, are you all set up and ready to go? Is that something that you feel you guys need more pieces to the puzzle of in regards to foundations? Thoughts there?
Yeah, yes, I still think like being able to get him to relax more is still definitely key. I feel like he's been doing a little bit better since we upped the reconcile.
Okay.
But he's still like yesterday I left him alone for about 2 hours and I recorded it the whole time.
Okay.
The first hour he did fairly well. Like he got up a couple of times and looked at the door. But then he would go back to his bed and he would lay down in it. He never like goes to sleep. He always lays down like kind of, up. But then like after that hour point, he just, it's strange because it's like when we first got him, he would like frantically pace and he would whine a lot and he would just start salivating. He wasn't that bad. He was getting up and going to the door. He was whining, but it was like little whines. It wasn't terrible. And then he would go back to his bed, but there was no like salivating. He didn't try to open the door like he's done before.
Good.
So it does seem like he is calmer, but just he's still worked up. And then when I came home, usually if he's like in a frantic panic, he does this thing where he just like keeps trying to press against us and he won't let us walk. He just he didn't really do that when I came home. He came and he met me. He was very excited. And then he kind of like blocked me once, but once I kind of lightly pushed past him, he was like, oh, okay. And then he went to his bed and he like waited for me. So again, it's like he's not calm, but he's calmer,
Okay, fair. And I honestly love that. So a couple of things that I'm going to talk about with you. You're seeing his ability to recover through this panic a little bit, where you're saying like, he can like go lay down. Yeah, he gets back up, but we're starting to see his brain say, there's an alternative behavior that I can do. I can just lay down and relax. I don't have to salivate. I don't have to pace. I don't have to freak out. I can do something else. I think also what you're starting to see is that decreased intensity. He's getting over this, or trying to, because it's not as intense. He's not that hyper salivation, pacey panty all over the place. He's actually able to think a little bit more logically about the fact that this is not the end of the world. They always return, or we are starting to get to the point where I'm not so panicked that I can actually understand that they're coming back and returning. So that's really, really key. What happened? Because you mentioned like after in the first hour, he was doing a lot of door checking but then laying down in between like those periods of going to the door and checking it out. What did it look like closer to that 2 hour mark, like closer to when you were getting back home, but you weren't home yet? How did he start escalating? Like, what did that look like as the duration built?
I would say yes, there was a little bit of escalation. He started becoming a little bit more vocal. So he was whining more and he kind of was doing this, like every once in a while he would kind of do a grumble. He never barked. I do think sometimes I did have the white noise machine going that was suggested to us, but I think sometimes some of his reactions are more due to like somebody walking down the hall, since we're in an apartment.
Okay. It's an actual triggered reaction from something like worriness. Okay.
Understood. Right. Like it's either he, because I wasn't even at the door yet. I could kind of hear that someone, like when I listened to the video, I could hear that someone was coming down the hallway, and it was me, but he like already was coming to the door because he like, and I mean, I doubt he knew it was me.
Right. It's just, it could be a person. So this is the response that I give as a dog, if that makes sense, which is probably something that he might even practice. Like, even if you are home, he might alert to, people walking out. He may not bark or vocalize, but it's something that he still may even register, even with you guys being home. So
yeah, I think he does. Cause sometimes he never vocalizes. If we're home, he never makes a noise. But I do think that sometimes, when like there are people who are kind of a little bit louder or just more audible, I guess, that like he can hear it, he will like lift his head, but then he he goes back to sleep. But yeah, I think if we're gone, then he's like, maybe it's more like he's hoping that any noise is like us coming back.
Could be. I mean, it could be, right? Like he might still be at that point where he's like, waiting, wishing that it could be. Now, do you feel like that there was a very clear point in time, like around the hour and 5 minute mark, hour and 10 minute mark, that you started experiencing more of that vocalization? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, actually, I would say it was probably about the hour and 10.
Okay. So what I'm going to challenge us to do when we start getting to this point, where I think for that first hour, I love what I hear. Once we get to that vocalization, I'm like, I'd like us to return home if possible sooner. Obviously, we can't make life perfect, and I get that. So now what we have is more feedback, so that when we are doing these departures, I want, how we kind of talked about last time, I want the overall duration, the average of that duration of our departures to be increasing, but I want to keep things random. So right now we kind of know an hour and 10 minutes, that's kind of like our sweet spot, where he's still doing maybe a little door checking in, still laying down. But once we start getting to that hour and 10, we might start getting that vocalization. We're working up that totem pole. So what I'm going to challenge us to do, I know we've been trying to do these every other day, and obviously once again, life happens. We might have to start actually just leaving him and being like, fingers crossed. And I get that. But if we can, leaving on those departures and having that departure, we can turn back home and say, all right, we're going to start fluctuating the time. We're at 70 minutes right now, an hour and 10. Next time we leave, we're only going to leave for 52 minutes. That way we're reducing it a little bit, still keeping it unpredictable, if you will, still keeping it in the area that he can be successful. But we're just going to come back at 52 minutes. I'm not going to wait for vocalization. I'm not going to wait for you to start escalating. I want to come back while you're actually relaxed, still keeping in that nice area of learning and logical thinking. At that point, I'd say fluctuate to a time that's going to be decreased, what he is successful at, and then start working that middle ground. So after another departure where we return just automatically at 52 minutes, could we go back up to say 63 minutes or 65 minutes, an hour and 5 minutes? Does that make sense? How we're keeping random, but starting to work up that slight ladder of increase. That way it's unpredictable, but at the same time, it's still fluctuating the time, because we aren't ever going to come home exactly at 8 hours, right? So I want to keep these things kind of fluctuated while we increase that average. Any questions there?
No, that sounds good.
Okay, awesome. And then I love what I'm hearing with the departure cues. I honestly just want you to keep rocking and rolling with those. I still want to see if we can really get to the point where maybe those keys, if that's the point where it's 50-50 right now. And that's also hard, because I'm right there with you. If that context means oh my God, I get to go outside and eliminate, and I already have that physiological drive, the keys may be something that I don't need him to be 100% not worried about them, but maybe to the point where he actually checks in and is like, are you asking me to go to do the walkies, or are you going to give that cue for the departure, right? So still working on these pre-departure cues, with knowing that if there is another context associated with those keys, we may never have a 0% response to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does.
Okay. And I really like how you guys are deciphering, this isn't a departure where we're leaving you, this is walkie time. I would still do that. I think that's very important for dogs to kind of decipher, you are coming with me. We have one cue in our household, and if our dog is coming with us, it's let's go. And if our dog's not coming with us, he doesn't get that cue. And it's funny because he'll literally stand there and be like, is it my turn? And if it happen, he kind of sits down and is like, oh, okay, so it's not. All right, that's fine. I get it. But I like having that differentiation because dogs are so contextual. And I think that helps them get a little bit more understanding of like, oh, okay, yeah, you are leaving me. I get that, but it's predictable to a certain extent. Okay. Now talk to me. Subtle relaxation training. Talk to me in regards to like, where are we at behaviorally with that? Is it to, because I know we were rocking and rolling last time. He was going over to the mat, giving us that down, all of that good stuff. Talk to me a little bit further about that foundation skill.
Yeah. So I'll admit the past couple weeks, our lives were kind of a little hectic. So we weren't able to do as much training as we would have liked, but over the past week, I was able to do 3 different sessions.
Awesome.
So I will say, he seems to understand that when the mat comes out, it means something. Okay. So the first time, over this past week that we did it, I put the mat out and I did the loading thing again because it had been a little bit since he had done it. And he, it took him maybe about like 5 to 10 minutes to pay attention. And then he came over and the first 2 times that he came to the mat and I did the click, I just allowed him to do like the front 2 paws. But then after that, I waited for the full 4 every time and he did it. Then 2 days ago, I think I did another session. Actually, Elliot and I did it together. He was, we did it through Skype, but nice. We both we were here and he, I had it next to me and that time I didn't do any loading. Perfect. He came right to the mat. And then I did the same thing where like when his front 2 were on it the first time, I did the click and I threw, but then after that, I waited for the full 4.
Good job.
And he did it every time. Last night, we tried to change it up a little bit because, Elliot was actually right. We kind of worried that it wasn't more about the mat. It was him just paying attention to me. Okay. And so like, we kept talking, so I was like ignoring him. Perfect. And we moved the mat over past me. Good. So that and I can see him. So every time, it was the same thing when I put the mat out, he went right to it. He didn't need it to be loaded or anything. Awesome. And then the first time he went completely on it. So I didn't even really have to wait for doing the step of the first 2. But Elliot was right that, he seems to be attaching it to me more than the mat a little bit because he would go to the mat and then I would throw it behind me. So he'd have to leave and go and grab it. And then he'd have to pass me. Each time he went to where the mat used to be. Yep. Gotcha. And he would sit there for,
maybe is this working? Not working.
Exactly. And it would be like maybe 30 seconds. And I would just continue to ignore him.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. And then he would go to the mat. And as soon as he went to the mat, I would click and we did it. So perfect. He did seem to start to get it, but I guess now with you knowing all that, like what would be your suggestions for like the next steps? Like, should I be doing a couple more times?
Yeah. So honestly, and that's even why in that type up, like the first line of it is like, I want the owner to be doing something when we get to this point in the training, because it's the dog and the mat that I want that connection with. So I love that you picked up, or that Elliot picked up on the fact that it's like, he's really fixating on you. So you guys actually hit the nail on the head. If I start seeing that, I pull the mat away from my owner. I have them disengage. I have you guys read a book, turn the TV on, do something else, so that you're not even paying attention to him. It needs to be about him in that mat area. So perfect job there. Now, the next kind of stepping point to this, and there's actually 2, is can we keep getting that distance between you and the mat? So keep having the mat at a significant distance and starting to generalize, like, I don't have to be sitting right here next to you and you can do this behavior. We can be across the room. You can be across the house, whatever that looks like, as much distance as you can start graduating that to. So that's kind of the first step, that we start getting a higher level of difficulty with it being further away from you and where those treats are coming from.
Okay.
Next part is going to be physiological relaxation. So yes, he's going over to the mat. That's fantastic. But is he actually able to now offer us some more relaxation? So I know obviously with his breed greyhounds, like some of them are not, like some are like they don't love sitting down, just from my experience. Does he like what does he like to do? Does he go right into a down? What's that like for him?
Yes, he goes right into a down. He hardly ever sits.
Okay. And is that a behavior that, and this is going to be weird just because just with his breed, I like to ask, does he enjoy laying down? I know that sounds really stupid, but like some greyhounds don't like offering that behavior. Like it's not something that they like to do. We really have to put it on cue. What does, like, if we wait it, and this is where the question really comes in. So if we wait it and after lots of reps, you're clicking and treating 4 paws and again 4 paws and again 4 paws, and it's like this pattern where it's like this is getting boring because now like we need to work on more. If we were to ignore him, you had the TV on, you're watching news tonight and you're doing this, and we get to like that 15th rep and we start waiting him out, would a down be a behavior that he would offer just naturally? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think he does. I think I don't know. I think the foster who previously had him had kind of like put that into him.
Cultivated that.
Yeah. So I do think that, because I noticed like if I'm preparing his food, he goes over to his bed and he lays.
Okay.
So I'm sure that if we just waited it out, and he was like associating like the mat with getting, good things, I think that he would end up doing that for me.
Okay. So recapping, first piece is starting to keep that distance. Matt's going to be away from you now moving forward. Like I want it to be like, you're going to go over there across the room and do that thing. Okay. And also I really want to start asking more from him. So it's not just those 4 paws, buddy. I need you to start really woo-sawing. I need you to lay down and then eventually maybe pop that hip so you're not so Sphinx pose. Mm-hmm. Drop your chin, really get actual physiological relaxation. Now, what I can say for a greyhound is sometimes we actually have to do some clicking and treating of steps that are getting him between standing and laying down. So there's a lot of behaviors in between there. And that's why I asked, like, does he like to sit? No, so that's fine. But there might be a few things that we can start clicking and treating right on the mat before we get that lay down. And it might help us get that down sooner. So let's talk about a few things.
Okay.
So for example, if you start your next session out and you do about 5 warm-up reps where you lay the mat down, he goes over to it, 4 paws. You click, you toss the treat away. We do that about 5 times or so. I'd start lingering with that click when he gives you 4 paws on that mat. And I would start looking for the next step of, do you look down at the mat? Do you look down and start sniffing the mat? I'm really looking for the body starting to get closer to that down position. And it doesn't actually have to be the down. This is what we call shaping, where I want you to lay down, but if you're standing up, how am I going to get you to that down position? And it might mean I have to click and treat right on the mat, these excessive approximations that are getting him closer to that down. So for example, if he goes over there, stands with 4 paws, looks down at it, click, you treat right on the mat. He looks back up at you after he snarfles that treat and is like, I'm going to stand here. Is this working? No, I'm going to look back down, maybe snarfle that mat again, click again. And he's like, wait a second, weight shifting down is getting me treats. Maybe after another 10 reps, I'm just going to splat and lay down. That's what I'm looking for. If, for example, you are waiting him out longer than about like 2-3 minutes for him to lay down, don't wait it out. See if you can find in-between behaviors to get him to that down sooner. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Awesome. And that's a very abstract concept, that shaping. Shaping really means that end goal is him going to the mat, laying down, physiologically being relaxed. Like that's very big. So if he's standing on the mat now and we want him to lay down, if there's anything in between, let's take that, let's click it, and let's start doing home delivery right on the mat when we're working on that. Okay. Any other questions with those next pieces with the mat work?
I don't think so. I think that was pretty, yeah, no, that was pretty detailed, and I have like little notes, so I'll be able to start working on that like in between area with him.
Sweet. And then what I can also say is, I know I sent you like my beginning spiel of subtle relaxation training, that little type up that I sent last time. I have another little paragraph that actually goes over this portion where it's like, all right, you're not going to do that reset and toss him away after we really get to the point of, okay, he's going to the mat. He's giving all four paws every single time this mat comes out. Now we start switching to home delivery where it's like, all right, I'll click and treat the warm up of the four paws, but eventually I'm not tossing you off the mat. Eventually I'm clicking and treating because your head's dipping down, you're laying down. And eventually we're clicking and treating because the hip pops, or I get in frog dog, or I drop my chin. I do deep inhale, exhale. Like really think of this next portion as yoga for dogs, if that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So I'll send you all that, and then I'll have you kind of toot around a little bit with that. And maybe even once Elliot gets back in town, he can kind of dabble a little bit. What is the timeline? Like when are you guys back? When are you guys back together? When does he arrive back home?
He comes home, I believe it's August 14th.
Okay, so he's got a little bit of time. So I'm trying to figure out the best next step in regards to follow-up for us, because I'm loving everything that we're hearing in regards to how our departures are becoming a little bit more successful. They're not as strenuous. We have these foundation skills. And I love how you're like, Kayla, we didn't have enough time to work on all this stuff. I'm like, my heart got happy when you said 3 sessions you got completed. So like, honestly, there's a lot that I'm throwing at you guys that can get overwhelming. What would be the next best step in your eyes in regards to follow-up? Like another Zoom session like this with Elliot involved, one before now and when he gets back? What are your thoughts along these lines?
I think probably going with one when he's back would be best, because I'm sure he'll watch this video and I'll go over everything with him as well. And then like while he's gone, you know, we'll either do the training together through Skype, like I was saying, or I'll just be doing it.
I love that. That is so awesome that you guys like had a little date night where you guys did some training. That's awesome. Yeah. That's really cool. Perfect. Yeah. All right.
And then, yeah, so I think like after that,
okay, cool. Then what I'll do, I will send you guys a link. I have lots of availability at the beginning of August. I'll send you guys a link to schedule. That way, when you guys like talk next, you can pull up your calendars and we can either schedule another Zoom session or we can do another in-person. So if you guys feel like you're tapped out with Zoom, I totally get it. We can drag you in the office. If you feel that the most effective way to meet, and maybe it's not even, Kayla, we need more training stuff. Maybe it's like, Kayla, we just need to meet and like decipher the next like departure plan in regards to time, duration, whatever that looks like. I'll send you guys a link to schedule that. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Great, perfect.
Yeah.
What else did you want to pick my brain about today? I got a couple extra minutes here. Were there any other areas that you had questions on? I want to make sure we get through all of the to-do list for you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, so it's mostly just making sure because I think, you know, I think over the next month we're lucky because for the most part, I'm home.
Okay.
So he doesn't have to be left alone for too long.
Okay.
But, you know, we just really, I want to make sure that if I do have to leave, because there have been a couple times where I have had to leave for a few hours.
Okay. So remind me this clonidine, because I hate to go to medication, but I know he can only do about an hour and 10 minutes. And if you have to leave, you have to leave. And that I get that. But you need to have a tool in your toolbox to grab for in the event that it's like, crap, Argo, I got to be gone for like 4 hours. Like, I can't have you practice that panic response. So talk to me about that situational med, thoughts on that.
Yeah. So, I feel like for the most part, when we've been gone for like the, you know, hour to 2 hours, we've been able to do the, like 2 hours ahead. I give, the, you know, 2 of the clonidine. So I guess like 0.6 milligrams, right? Yeah. And then, and that seems to do okay enough. Like it takes the edge off. He's not as worked up. Okay. But there have been a couple times where I did have to be gone for like 3.5 to 4 hours.
Which honestly, like, don't feel bad about that. You are a human and you have to live your life. I get it. It's hard though, because like the whole time you're guarding, you're freaking out about him freaking out. So it's like this vicious anxiety cycle. So then comes my question. 2 sounds good for a shorter duration. Mm-hmm. We have to leave longer. Have we ever tried 2.5 or 3? And I know that might be sedating up front, but would it help with the duration of us being gone? What have you experienced with that?
I do think it helps. We have done both 2.5 and 3.
Okay.
And yeah, the one time that I knew for sure I was going to be gone for like 4 hours, I did the full 3.
Okay. And then what did that look like for him at that point for that duration?
I do think that it helped. It
did. How long ago was that? I hate to keep cutting you off.
Did you say how long ago was it?
Yeah. Was it like when we first started treatment? Because I'm wondering if we're at a better spot with his daily medication, that might be at a better effective spot for situational use too, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, yeah, I do think it was closer to the last time that we had met. So, yeah, I haven't done the 3 in a while.
All right. So first test would be, does the 3 help you get through a longer duration? So that's why I referenced the daily medication. If we're seeing more from the daily baseline, the clonidine might last longer with more of an effect that's not just sedation and not anxiolytic. So I would say, like, and I don't want you to like test those waters, but if you need to leave like past that 3-hour mark, try the max dose and see if we're at a better spot with his baseline of his daily med to allow that to be a little bit more effective for him for that duration. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be the first piece. And then what I want you to do is keep me in the loop via email. Say, for example, you have to leave here in the next week or so for like 3+ hours, and we do the max dose of clonidine, and you're like, Kayla, I don't like it. It's too sedating, or Kayla, it's not working. It's not allowing him to cope. There are a ton of other meds that last a little bit longer than, say, clonidine, that we could do a really low dose of clonidine, but a low dose of another one to keep that medication going longer if we need to. Okay. So let's just see what the max dose does first. Let's see if that gives us that duration that we need. Sure. And if we're like, I don't like this or it's not working, there's lots of other options that we can pull for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that sounds great.
Okay, cool. All right, awesome. Good question. Any other questions before we hop off here?
I can't think of anything right now. I think it's just mostly I'll make sure that I'm working on the the relaxation steps, and then just keep moving forward with the departure cues and it's going to be slow progress, like how you've seen so far, but slow progress is better than no progress. So if you ever have those days, I know with Elliot out of town, you might have a little bit more on your plate, but don't hesitate to reach out if you need any additional support or guidance. Okay. Yeah, no, that sounds great. And I forgot to mention, another thing that we have noticed with him is I definitely think that the Reconcile is making a difference anyway, because he's actually like started going up to strangers. He started to so he is like easing up on his like constant tension that he used to have.
He's showing a little bit more confidence and bravery. You can actually just be a dog, man. It's all good. It must feel really good to see. So now what I'm going to challenge you, now that he's starting to come out of his shell, when we see him pursue this confidence that he's feeling and goes and say hello to that human, try to slip some treats in that human's hand. That way when he does come say hello, he gets this awesome association and is like, people are great. This is awesome. Like, that's what I want to start instilling in him.
Okay.
You're showing confidence in this bravery. Let's reinforce that with some yummy treats. Okay.
Okay.
Throwing another little piece at you there.
Yeah.
But yeah, keep me updated even between now and us scheduling next. I'll send you a full discussion summary at the end of today, just recapping our appointment. So be on the lookout for that. And then, like I mentioned, just shoot me any email updates that come across. Okay.
Okay. Sounds good.
Awesome, Robin. It was great seeing you. You guys take care.
You
Bye.
too.